The 5th Interagency IFP Forum Final Project Review of the Working Committee for Forward Transition was held last April 27, 2022, including an IFP media briefing that tackled queries and concerns regarding the continuity and sustainability of the implementation of the Infrastructure Flagship Projects under the Build program. The media briefing was participated by DPWH Undersecretary Emil Sadain, Chief Implementer of the Build program from Infrastructure Cluster, and members of oversight agencies from Economic Development Cluster such as Undersecretary Bayani Agabin of Department of Finance, OIC Undersecretary Roderick Palanta of National Economic and Development Authority, and Undersecretary Rolando Toledo of the Department of Budget and Management, and development partners namely Mr. Takema Sakamoto of Japan International Cooperation Agency and Mr. Kelly Bird of Asian Development Bank.
I have two questions actually. First is, we've been parading that the Duterte legacy is a golden age of infrastructure, correct? Were we able to really achieve this? If yes, what are your metrics by which you measure success? And then the next question would be, how big is the pipeline of projects that you will be passing on to the next administration? Thank you.
First of all, good noon to everyone and welcome to the Interagency IFP Forum. So far, this will be the final forum that we had under this administration. It's a composite team under the Build program composed of the infrastructure clusters, DPWH, DOTR, and these 15 line agencies implementing flagship projects. And we have our counterpart from the economic development cluster headed by the Department of Finance, hereby represented by Yusek Agabin, Yusek Rolly Toledo of DPM, Yusek Eric Plata of NEDA, and of course our partner from the development financial institutions of ADB, Mr. Kelly Bird, and Mr. Sakamoto of JICA. So in fact, there are three more, the representative from China Exim Bank, Korean Exim Bank, and World Bank. No? But apparently, they're actually represented by some technical staff. But nevertheless, with regards to the holistic program of the Build program of President Duterte, we are working on the 119 flagship projects, meaning these are the core infrastructure development program projects that we had for this government. The 119 projects so far, we had already completed around 12, 7 in 2020, 5 in 2021, or 12 of those. Another 7 is due for completion by mid of this 2022, and about 12 will be completed towards the end of 2023, meaning 31 projects are in the pipeline for completion towards 2022 December. But where are now the 88 other flagship projects? All of these are now in the advanced stage, 35 of these in the construction. We have 10 in the advanced stage of detailed design, 9 are in the procurement stage, and another 9 are in the perfections of the loan for new projects, while the other 25 are in the pipeline for review and approval by NEDA and preparatory stage. So we are speaking here of the huge funds amounting to about 5.080 trillion pesos to complete the whole 119 projects. So generally, this includes the 17 line agencies participating in the constructions of all these flagship projects. The forum that we have here now is one way of providing an avenue, a platform where we can discuss issues and problems that may be arising on the field, experienced by other line agencies, and from that, we derive our own solutions, initiative, how to mitigate, just to run the system smoothly towards its transition. So your question is about the transition. Eventually, 88 projects of this, which will be implemented from 2023 onward, will be that will be covered by the transition projects in the coming new administrations. Thank you.
Sir, if we were able to answer, if we were able to reach that golden age of infrastructure, can you guess what are your metrics for measuring the success?
You compare this with the previous administrations because the government expenses from the Duterte administrations ranging going up to 8 to 9 trillion pesos. The infra spending to GDP is actually at 5.9 or about 1.27 trillion pesos. And this is far beyond comparatively in terms of GDP, which my colleagues can answer on that, that goes beyond its normal standard. No? And the program are all actually geared towards infrastructures and development, which in the past many administrations has never been prepared this kind of momentums of project. And definitely because of the huge projects that are now actually generated for implementations, the golden age of infrastructure does not only speak of the early phase, it can even go to the next administrations. But one thing that is already appreciated, it was actually started under these administrations.
Yeah, if I may, Yusek Emil. Well, I guess just to complement what Yusek Emil mentioned, that I guess the headline metrics is the public expenditure as a percentage of GDP, and we're consistently hitting at the minimum 5% of GDP, and this is at least twice what was spent for as compared to previous decades. This is infrastructure development. That's the headline indicators. We have project level results, but this will be consolidated and reported in due time. Thank you.
You mentioned there are 88 projects that will be transitioned to the next administration. Is there an assurance, sir, na iko-kumpleto ito ng susunod na administration? Parang wala bang mga legal impediments para hindi nila ito ituloy?
Well, the standard response to that is basically this has been approved through the ICC process, through the NEDA board. So it went a thorough review of various aspects, technical, financial, economic, market analysis, institutional analysis, social analysis. So in a sense, the project makes sense. It will bring economic benefit to the people, provide better welfare to the Filipino people, will benefit from all these projects that will be implemented. So we can make a case, if they so desire, to explain these things again to them. So the operational, at least for us as bureaucrats, that it will be continued because the projects make sense. And then the metrics, the due diligence were undertaken before it was approved.
Sir, Jackie Manabot of ABS-CBN News. How will you ensure the continuity of the programs if the President has not yet endorsed his the administration candidate?
That's actually a complementary to the question earlier. Yeah, definitely the 88 projects, especially those that are already implemented, meaning with approved budget, definitely it has to go all the way to its full completion. But there are some stages where some of these might be replaced, reviewed, or altered. These are actually those projects, about 20 of these, or 25 of these are in the pipeline for review and approval by the NEDA board. No, but most of these are unsolicited proposals of PPP. But those that are already having its own funds, its own budget from the ODA, this has to go as it is. No? And from our perspective, we saw also that most of the candidates really support the infrastructure programs. Of course, to some extent, there are some of these will be going to review or to revisit. This is one reason why we always have to be more prudent in coming up with the delivery of basic infrastructures along the line of implementing the 119 projects One avenue is the interagency infrastructure public forum that we are actively organizing. In fact, this is the fifth. And report of this, the full output of this will be given to the Office of President, which will become part of the transition turnover of projects to the next administration. And this report is so vital for the next administration, as this will ensure a better transparency, a prudent transition, and a sustainable project implementations towards the next administration. And the objective primarily is to optimize and attain the highest benefits that can be derived from the program to the greater advantage of the Philippine people and the nation as well. So, yun po yung kabuuan.
If I may add, just mentioned by you, Blanda, these infrastructure projects are included in the programming tools natin, which is the Philippine PIP, the 3-year rolling infrastructure project, and at the same time, the Philippine Development Plan, of course. And these also are planning documents that is anchored on the Ambition 2040. So yun yung isang ano. But if you look at, we've taken a survey of the presidential announcement or during the debate and even for their interviews. And we take note of those presidential aspirants that it seems that they want to continue, but there's some varying, probably variation as far as the implementation of the Build program. For one, presidential Mayor Isko, sabi niya doon is he wants to continue the Build program, but with focus on social infrastructure, like for example, hospitals, community health centers, schools, and socialized housing. Also for Senator Lacson, he will focus on the some of the Duterte administration's Build program, plus even the Aquino administration's private-public partnership infrastructure programs and projects. Now also for Senator Bongbong Marcos, he will continue to implement programs or the Duterte's Build program, but focus on the creation of digital infrastructure and even for the energy sector. And for Manny Pacquiao, Senator Manny Pacquiao, he will introduce a version of the administration's Build, which will, of course, include a massive housing project. And finally, for us, Vice President PP Lenny Robredo's focus will be on the infrastructure for marginalized communities and, of course, for green infrastructure and resilient infrastructure. So we can see that the Build program will still be continued even in this after this administration, noting from those pronouncements by the presidential aspirants.
Sir, follow-up question. What do you think will be the challenges that the next administration will be addressing in terms of the Build projects? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, actually, initial output that were generated in the discussion this morning, we were able to list around 6 of those. No? First is the contract management. Among biggest challenges, the contract management, this refers to the management operations of the project itself. Second is the planning and technical operations, where the interfacings of all implementing agencies, the financing team must coexist hand in hand. Third is the acquisitions of road right-of-way, which is normally that has been always in the norms of challenges that we in the government implementing projects always support. Second is the fiscal management, where we have to focus giving priority to the core program, especially on infrastructures of any administration. Fourth is the utilization, extension, and expirations of the law, meaning the given timeline for a single loan has to be recognized, respected, with due accountability for any implementing units. And the approved plans and design should have been also be followed through. And the last but not the least is the strengthening organizational structure. We saw how important a complete staff work, not only on the office environment, but also on the field group, no? Where you need to have a complete staff work from the technical, financial, operations to stand a better completion of a single project. So those are part of the challenges that we saw. And part of the report that we'll be giving to the next administrations includes, among others, these challenges as well.
Hi, Sir. Karen from TV. For you, Sir Emil, what would be the implication if hindi po maituloy ng next admin yung mga nakabinbin ng proyekto at yung mga nasa pipeline?
I think that has to be pondered upon by the coming next administration. So the current group that we had, since we are still in the government, is willing to sit down for any discussions or any innovation that has to be needed for adoptions on the project implementation. But nevertheless, I could see that most of the potential candidates really favored a massive infrastructure development, since this become a backbone of the economy and socio-economic development of the Philippines. No? It is pure economic progress, and of course, this is what we need actually in the terms of infrastructures. Malayo na po tayo kumpara sa ating neighboring nations, and we have to catch up the huge backlog on infrastructures that we have now. So it's good under the Build program. This answers the whole backlog so far, the gap that is actually missing. No? So tuloy-tuloy po to, and we are pretty sure that next administrations will really support the sustainability of these implementations as well.
Sir, impact naman if regarding dun sa expiration ng loan, what if hindi masunod, and ano ba yung commitment natin dun sa mga lending institutions natin?
It's more on the managing the project. So far, we are actually in the pipelines of implementations now. So wala pa naman nag-expired na loan sa atin, but we have to be more cautious on that. So kaya that's part of our prevention na we cannot go far towards meeting the time extensions or the time extensions of the loan. But there are some instances, especially for a tied loan, where commitment fee is actually disregarded. So you can just implement as it is, as long as you have a necessary justifications. If there's a need for extension, like the case of pandemic, it's actually a universal issue where the bank also can understand the possible extension if there's a need for that.
Sir, for NEDA, magkakaroon ba ng negative impact? Ano yung specifically negative impact for the Philippines if ever hindi matuloy yung mga commitment dun sa mga lending institutions? For Department of Finance, if you can answer. Oh, sorry. Sir, sorry, my question is, ano po yung magiging negative impact for the Philippines if ever hindi masunod yung commitment regarding dun sa ating mga lending institutions dito sa Build?
I'm not aware of any negative impact because when we sign a loan with our development partners, we have more or less we have approval actually already at the ICC level of the project, and that means it has been studied that the project will bring about high economic returns. When NEDA studies a project, it goes through a screening process. You have so much funds, diba? And you have so many demands for so many projects. You have to choose which one has the highest impact. And so when it goes to NEDA, NEDA validates that. It's better to build a bridge across two islands, than in some remote community. It goes to that. So we've been working very well with our development partners, JICA and ADB. In fact, if you look at the total ODA, total funding for PPP projects, we have around 55 projects amounting to 2.9 trillion pesos. It represents 57% of the total build projects we have in place. And I'm glad to report that working together with our development partners, they've been very supportive, and we've been working in a very cooperative manner with them.
Sorry for my last question for you, Sadain. Yung naging problem kasi ng current admin ngayon is wala silang master plan na nadatnan nung pagpasok ng Duterte admin. So ngayon po, mayroon po ba tayong master plan for transition? Ano po yung mga importante na kapaloob doon?
If you're referring to DPWH, we have 44 flagship projects among the 119. No? In fact, DPWH and DOT are about 39. That constitute around 70% of the total build program projects within the 119 total flagship projects. So for the 44 OTA funded projects that we had, we started all this with feasibility studies and master plan. Meron siya lahat covered yan. Although to a few na meron ng previous master plan, but we have to update it kasi mga 5-10 years ago pa. So that's one way of doing a prudent engineering works on any new projects. Without a master plan or a feasibility study, it would be hard to endorse or to promote new projects. In fact, part of the prudent review done by the NEDA-ICC board, all big-ticket projects should have its own feasibility study. So meaning we invested a lot of preparatory works from FS master plan before we submit the proposal for NEDA-ICC review. So lahat yan. So gawa na lahat yan. In fact, more than the 44, we have in our pipeline around 5 additional projects that did not go through anymore to the flagship projects. But we are willing to forward this for the next administrations, as this will ensure a more better appreciations on the on land control projects, some additional road network connectivity, and even tunnels and bridges. So maganda ang kalalabasan nito. Mapupuno ang next administrations ng infrastructure, not only from DPWH, not only from DOTR, but the entire 17-line agencies involved under the Build program. We are ready, pretty much ready, for a better transitions of all these big-ticket projects. Mabubusog yung next administration sa laki ng infrastruktura na ibigay natin.
Thank you.
I guess to add to that, yung ano lang, it's part of this build program natin is the development of the pipeline, as mentioned by Yusek Emil. For a time, DBM gave even NEDA some resources to conduct feasibility studies, master planning exercises, and one of those, at least 3 of those that are prominent in the scheme of things are the Philippine Water Supply and Sanitation Master Plan. We also have the Manila-based Sustainable Development Master Plan, and also the National Irrigation Master Plan. We also help LUA, other agencies to conduct various feasibility studies through the Project Development Resources Studies Fund of NEDA. But bottom line is that pipelining of future projects in case the incoming team would want to upscale the investment in infra. We have prepared those kinds of studies. Thank you.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, good morning. I'm RJ of Business World. You mentioned 6 challenges. Which of those challenges you mentioned have impacted the most our existing BBB projects, given that we were only able to finish so far 12, right? So which among these 6 have impacted the most our existing BBB projects, and what should the next administration which of these should be immediately addressed by the next administration in order to enable these projects to continue?
Actually, sir, it's all the entire 6. All the entire 6. But definitely, the most challenging here is the right of acquisition. Especially if most of the projects are the urban centers. Of course, we have some projects on the countryside development, but still because of the documentations that are actually in needs before a formal payment is made, you really have to go for the thorough compliance of all these documentations. And you have also to separate the right-of-way acquisitions on the formal settlers and non-formal settlers. If we talk of non-formal settlers, these are actually those that are actually living with no definite ownership on the land. You have to provide some housing units as part of your relocation package. On the formal owners of the land, you can always face people that agree to sell their land, or maybe they will refuse or object for the project. So once they object, you go for court litigations. No? If it cannot be taken through negotiations, you go for court litigations. And we know that court litigations also goes through a process, several process before a certain land can be awarded to the government after issuing of the payment. So you see the dynamic of right of way acquisition. No? I think we need to look at it how we can measure up some possible amendment to the existing law that we had in the right of way acquisitions of the projects.
Like what amendments? What amendments are you trying to propose?
That's actually if we can shorten the acquisition process, no? Because the titlings of the land by the owner has to be always on an updated version. So if people actually living in states or anywhere abroad, you need to have some special power of attorney to issue to a person who will work through with these papers. But still the ownership, the rightful ownership is necessary to sign the documentations if there's a need to update all these papers. So doon po tinatagalan. But we're doing some way on addressing it by putting the solutions more earlier than the civil works portion. Meaning on the design stage, we have to already acquire right of way acquisitions. No? The effort should be already put. In fact, even in the FS itself, we put it as a more visible element of the content of the FS, the right of way acquisition package for the informal settlers and non-formal settlers. So para at least maayos siya.
Under the Duterte administration, has that improved actually? What have you done?
Yes, we do it that way, no? We did it that way. In fact, for DPWH, we even institutionalized the right of way acquisition, not only from the legal department, but all implementing units that we had, down to 16 regional offices and the 5 UPMO clusters. We have our own right of way acquisition unit para lang at least mabilis siya. So it becomes part of the project-based issue in providing solutions to a right of way acquisition programs.
All right. So for the ADB and JICA, sirs, can you talk more about your financing commitments for the next administration? And how do you assess the current?
First, yes, thank you very much. Akoposhi Sakamoto, I'm the Chief Rep of JICA, Philippine office. Actually, I'm very new, but I'm very excited to be here to co-work, to be able to co-work with my colleagues here. And simply saying, I'm very positive for the Philippines BBP policy, and we are very happy to support that. And before responding to your questions very simply, I'd like to add two important views, I believe, from the viewpoints of the donor's partner or the international society. One important issue is importance of the securing the good perception or image of the market. Because BBP policy is very important for the sustainable growth or brighter future. But public side cannot cover everything. So private sector development is very important. How to invite, how to mobilize private sector. This is a key. And from this point of view, trust or better business environment creation is very important. From this point of view, I think ADB is having a similar view. JICA is very enthusiastic to support the Philippine governments to make an infrastructure development because, for example, I have several surveys results here. One survey is conducted by Japanese bank. Based on that survey, Philippines' attractiveness comparing with other countries all over the world is not so high Comparing with China, India, Vietnam, Thai, Indonesia, the ranking of the Philippines is a little bit lower. And maybe you know the Davos conference annually, the World Economic Forum is having. And based on their surveys, infrastructure development is the most important keys for the Philippines' development for the future. They are resulting in that. Based on their World Economic Forum's survey, in terms of the infrastructure situation, Philippines is ranked at 96 among 141. And based on another survey by IMD, Institute for Management Development of, this is a Swiss academic institution. They are issuing a World Competitiveness Ranking 2021. Based on that, Philippines' infrastructure situation is ranked at 59 among 64. This is the situation. And so, how to ease or relax the obstacles of the FDIs? We are very happy to support government of the Philippines. And this is very crucial for the future brighter days, livelihood of my beloved Philippine friends. So, supporting BBB program is very, very natural, I believe. And based on this, then how to ensure the, how can I say, commitment from the market, private sectors. This is a key. And we are supporting government of the Philippines, but there are still challenges, just you mentioned, that you mentioned. And my friend Yusek Sadain mentioned 6 challenges. And I'd like to highlight the biggest challenge is how to ensure, how to obtain the market support. And from this point of view, contract management or the timely, how can I say, a timely execution of the project plans. This is very important because there are so many Japanese private companies, private contracts on the ground. And I'm very sorry, but to be frank with you, there are so many cases they are suffering from the delay of the land acquisition, land handing over, or delay of the payment. But I believe the next administration can continue to endeavor to sort out these matters just like our colleagues is now doing. And we are very happy to support from outside. But anyway, in order for obtaining the market support, timely payment or the timely handing over of the land acquisition or some sort of the contract management, appropriate contract management, this is the biggest challenge, I believe. And subject to those improvements, JICA is very happy to try to convince Tokyo to mobilize bigger and bigger resources for my Filipino colleagues for the brighter future. Of course, it depends on the maturity of the plan or the priority of the plans and so on. I'm in a position to convince Tokyo. I need the weapon to convince Tokyo with a good track record of the ongoing projects on the ground. And they are doing very well, I think. They're endeavoring very much. And we are very happy to support them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. I think we heard from Eric, for example, that public spending or spending on infrastructure now is well above 5% of GDP. And ADB's analysis shows that when you have infrastructure spending above 5% of GDP, that adds on at least 1 percentage point to GDP growth. So it's a difference between achieving 5% annually and something like 6.3%. So it is critically important to maintain infrastructure spending above 5% because it improves growth, it creates jobs, and it helps to reduce poverty. But to get it well above 5%, you need a good mix of financing. Public financing is critically important. You need PPPs and you need private financing. For the Asian Development Bank, under our country partnership strategy 2018 to 2023, we have 3 strategic pillars. It's investing in Filipinos, it's promoting local economic development, and infrastructure investment in support of the build. So what we've done under our country strategy is that we've increased lending overall by an average of $3 billion a year, up from $600 to $800 million from 2011 to 2017. So we have increased our volume, but we also rebalanced it towards infrastructure. So around 60% of our lending is on infrastructure. And ADB is committed to continue that going forward into the next administration. The Asian Development Bank remains very much committed to the Philippines. We believe infrastructure investments does help to improve growth, competitiveness, create jobs, and reduce poverty. Under the last few years, the Asian Development Bank had approved the Malolos-Clark Railway project, co-financed with the government of Japan, implemented through the Department of Transportation. We're also advanced stages of preparing our South Bermuda Railway project, which is from Manila to Colombo. We also had approved our EDSA Greenways Pedestrian Walkways project in 2020, our Angat Dam water transmission project in 2020, and last year our Metro Manila Bridges project. What we have under preparation now going forward is, for example, as I mentioned, the South Bermuda Railway project, but we're now working closely with the DPWH and the Department of Transportation in preparing the Davao Bus Modernisation Project, the Bataan Cavite Bridge, the Laguna Expressway, and the MRT4 project. So these are projects that are in advanced stages of detailed engineering design and would be ready for implementation over the next 2 or 3 years. So the Asian Development Bank remains very much committed to helping with quality preparation of projects and also financing them.
So 4 major projects for the next administration?
That we have under preparation, yes. But of course, usually we then, the next administration, of course, will have their own priorities, and we'll continue that discussion with them as well.
So similar to Sir Sakamoto, what's your assessment of the current administration with its implementation of its projects in connection with ADB's?
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Our position is just similar to the position of the ADB, Asian Development Bank. Of course, we have to wait and see the new administration formulation, and we are very happy to discuss and consult with them in a very positive manner. And actually, we are having a very huge, gigantic ongoing projects still underway, like north-south commuter railways, or Metro Manila subways, or passing Marikina River flood control projects, and so on. Still, these are still underway. And also, we are still underway for some projects for our surveys, like Paranaque Spillway project, or Manila important road and bridges anti-seismic project, and so on. We are very happy to continue these projects, but of course subject to the ownership of the new administration. So that's why we are very happy to continue to discuss or consult with the new administration. And Sadain-san, do we have some more time? May I add some more? May I supplement? Yes, thank you very much. And this is the answer for your question. And I almost forgot one thing to let you know from my point of view. This is a point of the debt situation or macro-financial space of the government of the Philippines. Just as my colleagues from ADB Kelly mentioned, public financing is very important, of course. But at the same time, of course, as I told you, private sector development or engagement is also very important. And I think there might be some argument such ODA versus PPP. But actually, I don't think this argument is not so correct. I think ODA or donors, partners support, financial support is essential for promotion of PPP. This is my thoughts. And for example, in order to promote the PPPs, they need electricity, they need the accessibility of the roads, they need water supply. Without these, who cannot decide to invest here? And who can prepare those, how can I say, public services? The answer is very simple. Government of the Philippines. And we are very happy to support that for the purpose of the promotion of PPP. And in such a case, the Philippine government needs the gigantic money to mobilize. And maybe they can rely on the lending support from ADB, JICA, or other donor agencies. And some arguments are on the ground. We are borrowing so much. Now we should look into the macro-financial situations and so on. But don't worry, this is my answer, because my colleague is here. And actually, I'm new. I arrived in this lovely country in the mid of last month. Only 1 month has passed. And I had a series of discussions and meetings with many secretaries. And I believe every secretary has similar views with my views. Fiscal space is still here. We can manage that. And I have so many things to tell you, but because of the time restrictions, I just introduced the views of the IMF. One, based on the data sustainability analysis of the IMF, latest version in August last year, the first point of the DSA of the IMF is debt to GDP ratio will decline. 2, macroeconomic performance is sustainable. 3, debt composition is stable. This debt composition is very important. Nominal debt to GDP ratio is roughly 60% or something. Actually, I don't think this is a very risky level. But the more important is the debt composition. Concessional lending or the private banking lending also. Or foreign currency lending or the local currency lending. The composition should be looked into very carefully. And IMF said, number 3, debt composition is stable. And number 4, the result is that external debt is sustainable. And ADB, JICA, or other multilateral donors are very willing to propose our further financial support with the concessional conditions. So please do understand this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Kelly Bird, just your assessment of the current administration's
Last question,
project.
sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I can sum it up as being hugely successful. Been able to get public spending above 5%, more or less consistently. I think, and it's double what the ratio was, say, 10 years before. And that's led to some very transformative projects that are very important. And I mentioned, for example, the railway projects, the expansion of road networks and bridges. And these are not only, these are lifting up long-term economic growth, but creating jobs, and they're critically important for the economic recovery. They're also important for, creating new income opportunities for the poor. So these infrastructure projects are related to poverty reduction. Also going forward in the future, climate change is going to be a challenge, and therefore projects like mass public transportation, flood protection, irrigation projects, pedestrian walkways are going to be important to help mitigate climate change, but also allow the Philippines to adapt to climate change. So I think that's another important factor for infrastructure going forward. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
With that, we end our short press briefing for this morning. In the interest of the time, sir, sige sir, Sir Lawrence.
Yes. Yes. As I've mentioned, coming up with a huge package of infrastructure projects is not an ordinary task. No? You compare that with the previous administrations. This actually entailed a huge effort, both technical, financial, operations, where this government, particularly the infrastructure clusters and the financial, the economic investment or the economic development partner really plays a major role. In fact, even the promotions going outside of the country was actually carried out by our team. And no less than the secretaries of DOF as chairman of the Economic Development Committee or cluster, and the infrastructure clusters headed by Sec Mark Villar at that time, and today is Sec Mercado along with Sec Ducade. It's really a holistic approach, no? But of course, you cannot simply say for one project or one big project that can be done or complete overnight. It has to consume much of the time element from the loan, from the preparations of the design to the procurement to the constructions. It entails a lot of time. Let's dismiss the competitions of whose administrations has actually done. No? In fact, one thing is good with the third administration, it started everything. So next administration should sustain the implementation, the momentum, if we wanted to have a holistic benefits also on the attainment of this program. So that is how we look at it, because the golden age of infrastructure doesn't only stop at these administrations, it goes beyond to the next succeeding administrations. No? If we want to ensure that there will be a closure on the infrastructure gap, as we saw comparatively with the other neighboring countries. So yun po ang pananaw natin. Thank you.
Again, thank you to our media friends for lending your time in today's 5th Interagency Forum of the IFPs. And on behalf of our resource persons, tuloy po natin yung lunch natin sa baba. Thank you.